sadness the Birmingham family who say their mum's killer should never have been released on parole.
He's 52 years old now, and he's got potentially half of a life left because people are living a lot longer. Me and my sister have a headstone.
Jean Bellis's daughters say they do not understand the parole board's decision to let him out of prison. Also tonight, job losses in the bus and coach industry. Coventry-based De Courcy Travel goes into administration, putting 180 jobs at risk.
There are job cuts too at this Warwickshire bus and coach firm. Almost its entire fleet is confined to the depot as the industry struggles to cope with the impact of the COVID crisis.
How lottery money is being used to research ancient ponds carved from glaciers into the Midlands landscape.
And it's a week of peaks and troughs. Today was a peak and tomorrow most definitely isn't. Storm Francis is on the way, bringing strong winds and heavy rain. All the details coming up.
Good evening. The daughters of a woman murdered in Birmingham more than 25 years ago say they're appalled her killer's been granted parole despite never having shown remorse for his crime. Jean Bellis died in 1993, but it wasn't until 1999 that Peter Hastings was convicted of her murder. He was given a life sentence and ordered to serve a minimum of 17 years in jail. He's now successfully applied for parole, although Jean's family say he should never have been released. Lindsay Doyle reports.
A family video showing the mother of teenage daughters in the prime of her life. In April 1993, Jean Bellis, who lived alone in King's Standing in Birmingham, was found dead at her home. Now the killer, jailed for her murder, is being released by the parole board.
To find out that he's getting out of prison, and it actually states on paper that he's got no remorse. And he's given no explanation. In fact, he's still denying that he murdered my mum.
Mrs. Bellis had been tortured and murdered by Peter Hastings from Druids Heath, who her family believes had been stalking her. Initially accused of her murder, charges against him were dropped due to a lack of evidence. Rapid advances in DNA technology finally brought him to justice 5 years later.
Justice has been done. We've waited 6 years for it, and we're pleased that it was done today. Every one of us has cried now. Every one of us screamed for joy.
Hastings had stabbed his victim 29 times. He then tried to strangle her with his belt. Despite her horrific injuries, she may have survived, but Hastings had dragged her into the kitchen, out of sight of passers-by, leaving her to die. It was a strand of hair found on his discarded belt and a bloodstain in his shoe, which led to his conviction.
It hurts me, my sister, to think she was alone in that house, dying in the kitchen. I really cannot see how the parole board can let him out of prison. I don't understand it.
In directing the release of Peter Hastings, the parole board has said, decisions are solely focused on what risk a prisoner could represent to the public if released, and whether that risk is manageable in the community.
He's 52 years old now, and he's got potentially half of a life left because people are living a lot longer. Me and my sister have a headstone.
Vanessa and her sister Rhonda objected against the parole board decision and are now starting a petition calling for life sentences to mean just that. Lindsay Doyle, BBC Midlands Today, Birmingham.
Over the next couple of weeks, pupils across the region will be returning to school for the new academic year. For many, it will be the first time they've had formal lessons since lockdown began in March, and classrooms and routines are going to feel very different under COVID safety rules. At the JCB Academy in Rochester, the new term actually started today. Here's our Staffordshire reporter, Liz Copper.
Not every day promises to be quite so much fun, but this is the first day back at school for these 13-year-olds. They're the new intake at the JCB Academy, and to start the new term, they're doing team-building activities outdoors at Oldham Castle. So after months away from school, how does it feel to be back?
Originally, I did have lots of worries and I was scared and I didn't want to go out the house or anything, but as time's moved on, now we're back to school, I'm really not too worried at all. I'm just really glad to be back.
like my brain, it hasn't really been working for these past how many months. So I think it is needed for children to go back to school.
It's nice having a set schedule where you could do things and not just going around and doing whatever you feel like.
I feel a lot better now. I'm actually getting into a routine instead of just sleeping all day and doing whatever I want. It feels better to have a routine and something to do.
Back at the academy, year groups are in bubbles on different floors. Hands are sanitised outside every classroom and workshop areas are disinfected between lessons. The priority now, getting back into a normal routine.
Exciting that they're back in the building. Yes, we have to mitigate that risk, but equally it's a great opportunity again for our young people to socialise and to enjoy their learning.
Despite changes to the way some lessons are taught, there's no escaping the fact there's been lost learning, and employers need to be flexible, according to the Academy's Chair of Governors.
There are always new ways of getting involved and understanding what they might be missing and how employers can help schools fill in some of the gaps in just new ways of working or doing things remotely. But above all else, you've just got to get started.
Balancing the requirements of COVID safety with the need for uninterrupted education will be the challenge this year. But the new term is now underway. Liz Copper, BBC Midlands Today, Roaster in Staffordshire.
Well, you've been getting in touch with your views about whether you feel comfortable with pupils returning to school. On Facebook, Paddy P says it's bad enough period to be living through as an adult, but the freedom children are missing out on is so unfair. Good for them to be back in education. John Phillips says they should never have had all that time off anyway. They've not kept to the rules and it's all been a joke. Christine Holdcroft adds, I live by a park and the children from 6 to 15 have been all together with no social distancing. At least school is a controlled area, probably a safer place to be. And Fred Ward says simply, can't wait. Thank you for all your comments. The West Midlands Police Federation is campaigning for the law to be changed to prevent people using cars as weapons. Currently, officers don't have the legal powers to order drivers to turn off their engines and get out of the car when stopped. That's resulted in a number of incidents when officers have been seriously injured by drivers speeding off.
We have 4 cases a week where officers in the West Midlands are driven at in these circumstances. Even if we can just reduce that by 1, then that would be some success. Our legal advice confirms that the changes could be implemented by minor amendments on the existing sections, and it's not going to involve a significant curtailment of existing civil liberties. So I do think that the government have got a duty to step up to the mark, give our officers the protection that they need.
2 people have been arrested on suspicion of a murder in Leamington Spa. A 54-year-old woman was found with serious head injuries at a property on Valley Road in the Lillington area in the early hours of this morning. A 15-year-old girl and a 28-year-old man are being questioned by police. Protesters have once again tried to prevent contractors for the high-speed rail project from felling trees along the route. They've been out at the Fossway near Offchurch in Warwickshire today. HS2 Limited says the project will provide a greener way to travel and have urged environmental groups to support the scheme. Journalists working for weekly newspapers in the region are preparing to take strike action over planned redundancies. Bullivant Media, which owns titles such as the Coventry Observer, Redditch Standard and Worcester Observer, are to cut 3 posts out of 18. There'll be a socially distanced picket outside the Redditch office tomorrow, with further industrial action planned over the coming weeks. Now, the government recorded a jump in the residential property market across the UK last month, probably due to pent-up demand as estate agents were at work again after lockdown. HM Revenue and Customs estimates transactions were 14.5% higher in July than they were in June, but still 27.4% down on the same time last year. In Shropshire, one estate agent says around half the inquiries they're getting about houses are from people looking to move into the county. Emma Thomas reports.
The UK's economy shrank by a fifth in the second quarter of 2020, but there's one industry in which this is a year of growth.
When lockdown began this spring, economic forecasters predicted misery for the housing market, and there was a hiatus in sales. However, these are becoming a common sight outside homes in the Midlands.
On the houses that we're taking on, we're probably, within a matter of a couple of weeks, really selling 70% of them.
These newlyweds are purchasing a home together, and to do so they sold not one, but 2 properties during lockdown.
Yeah, I was sceptical, and the estate agent valued it higher than I expected, and I thought that this could all go horribly wrong, but actually the estate agent was bang on. I got much more than I expected and sold it within 10 days to the first viewer at the full asking price.
Property professionals suggest the booming market tells a story of change for the Midlands, a potential migration to rural areas.
The 186% increase of new buyer inquiries moving from Birmingham to more rural areas, their search criteria are changing, larger gardens, this sort of thing. So perhaps their priorities have changed a little bit, which is inevitable and understandable considering they've just spent the last three months stuck inside.
First-time buyer Rachel was close to getting the keys to a city property, but then COVID-19 arrived in the UK.
Just gave me complete cold feet about being away from my family, being away from my friends, and being in a new town where I don't actually know as many people, and I've got a situation trying to meet people, but we're not actually allowed to go anywhere near anyone. We've got to stay at home.
She's since had an offer accepted on a house just a few minutes away from her family and friends in Shropshire.
Quite a few of my friends, they're actually considering potentially moving back. A few of my friends have moved back. My sister was supposed to be actually moving to London herself, and she's completely put that on hold.
Today was due to see the end of a ban on evicting tenants, but the ruling has been extended for 4 more weeks, providing protection for renters, but problems for some landlords.
Who are looking to get their properties back due to long-standing rent arrears, nothing to do with COVID-19, and also tenants who are with antisocial behaviour.
It may be August, but agents and movers alike tell me one thing. They'd like their deal done by Christmas, which, if you're interested to know, is just 18 weeks away. Emma Thomas, BBC Midlands Today.
Goodness me, sorry about the Christmas warning there. Certainly took me by surprise. I'm sure it took some of you as well. Now, £250,000 has been set aside to protect a wildlife habitat in Herefordshire that's existed since the Ice Age. The ponds were first carved out by glaciers and are now teeming. Birmingham has a new boxing champion as Shakan Pitters takes the British light heavyweight title. And how lockdown has proved to be a bonus for a local charity that makes wigs for poorly children. Two transport companies in the Midlands have announced they're shedding jobs today due to problems caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Travel de Courcy, which is based in Coventry, has been put into administration. It's the largest privately owned bus and coach company in the Midlands, employing 180 people and runs services to the local hospitals, the Rico Arena and the area around the NEC. Also cutting posts are Johnson's coaches. They're based in Henley and Arden, which is where our transport correspondent Peter Plisner has been today. Earlier, he sent us this report.
Not a good day for the Midlands bus and coach industry. Travel de Courcy, much loved transport firm, calling in the administrators this morning. Management said the COVID crisis, a reduction in services and a drop in passenger numbers left them with no alternative. The administrator says they may be able to save some jobs if services and contracts switch to other operators. Here at Johnson's in Henley and Arden, they're facing similar issues. As you can see, the bulk of their fleet is in the depot. They've announced around 78 redundancies. With me is John Johnson, the commercial manager here. How bad are things, John?
Yeah, it's not good at all. As you can see, we're in week 23. These coaches haven't moved in that time. We're working really hard to try and find new work. Bookings are coming in for next year, but of course that's for next year. The rest of this summer and all through this winter, it's going to be quiet here. So,
what support are you receiving from the government?
Well, we're getting some help from the government. They've been good with the furlough scheme. We've got some support for the bus side of our business, but for the coach side, it's very little. And once furlough ends, we're going to have problems.
You've likened your situation to that the theatres are facing.
Absolutely, because in the end, our business is about groups travelling together on a coach. Now, whether it's holidays, day excursions, corporate travel, hotel travel, football clubs, everybody is in a group travelling together. So you can imagine how hard our industry has been hit.
John, many thanks. Well, I can tell you that bus firms that run scheduled services are getting support from the government, but coach firms like this don't get the same level of support. Without it, some say there'll be more job cuts.
That's Peter Plisner reporting.